We are an early stage fund, just got started last year, started by 3 of us who were all part of Helion. Our first fund is about $100 million, and the focus is early stage tech companies, typically Series A or a pre-Series A stage business. One of the big differentiators of the fund is the set of founders who have invested in this fund, and that builds a unique network that is of advantage to us when we are sourcing deals, also when we are diligencing companies, and to the portfolio, because these guys get involved in some functional areas or the other with the portfolio companies. And some of these names are public, people like founders of Taxi for Sure, LifeCell, LiveSpace, and so on. Since we started in January, we have made 4 investments, which are on the left side: Wider, Whatfix, Noticeboard, and MFine. Some of our prior investments at Helion included companies like Big Basket, Simply Learn, Taxi for Sure, Zepho, LiveSpace. So a lot of the learnings that at least I'll talk about today are derived from that portfolio. But it is a bias, or it is a small sample set. Each venture firm has only so many companies that they can talk about. So you may find some of this may or may not apply to you. But I'll share whatever I've learned in last 10 years. My personal background is I've been investing for last 10 years, 9 years with Helion, 1 year with Stellaris, and prior to that worked in different companies for 9 years again. And 3 different software companies: Microsoft, I2, MarketRx, and then consulting with BCG. So I'll just start with a slightly broader topic, and please do ask questions in between also. We don't have to wait till the end for all the questions to accumulate. So the broad area, you might have seen this actually just before this. Somebody was asking me, what do you guys look for? As in, I said, it is so generic an answer that everybody you talk to will give you the 4 same answers, which is we look for good team, addressing a large market, building a unique solution, and overall making financial or economic sense to make an investment. In terms of you can do all 3, but you may still not have a company that creates a large exit. So the last piece being it makes sense to make the financially it makes sense to make an investment in that company in terms of input output. So those are 4 broad areas. Today I'll just try to jump deeper into the team part, and as I said, this piece on what do investors look for in teams when they invest is a very hard question to answer, because the approach and the thought process is very subjective and is very specific to each investor. So what I may feel is, the 4 important things may not be same as some other investor if you talk to them. And we are all learning. We are only 10 years in venture, so it is not too long. I think 20, 30 years later, there will be more clearer answers as to what do good teams look like, right? 4 broad areas, at least based on my learning. One is just sheer strategic thinking, and we'll go deeper into why it matters, and at least we gauge strategic thinking. And within strategic thinking, there are 3 broad areas that we look for: people who think long term, people who have big ambitions, and people who have insights. On the other side is how good is the CEO in terms of people management. This includes both hiring and retaining people, and also in some sense communication styles. And when I say communication style, it is not just internal communication, but also external communication in terms of when you go and talk to customers, suppliers. Can you sell to them is very important. Focus on customer satisfaction. This was something that at least a few years back we didn't used to evaluate at Helion. And the last one goes without saying, given that at least we invest in tech companies, orientation around technology that the CEO brings matters a lot. And I'll again give examples of how one figures out how strong is the orientation towards technology. On the long-term thinking, why does it matter? So that if you look at those questions, it matters because people who think long-term has a picture or a vision in mind. They have a viewpoint which is 5 years from now. Now, not every time those viewpoints, play out, but then they keep on revising those viewpoints. But they do have a viewpoint of what 3 years, 5 year out landscape will look like. It helps them figure out what to do and what not to do. to maneuver, when there are choices that every founders will face. I was actually just talking to a company, I don't know if they're here or not, but without naming them, they were asking, they are a solution for retailers. Now, should they target an unorganized retailer or should they target an organized brand-oriented retailer? That's a choice you are making when you're going with a go-to-market. And it depends on what vision you have 5 years from now. And that's what matters. That also allows you to allocate resources, which is people. Essentially, where do you spend energy and money? Matters, because if you have a viewpoint, you'll focus on stuff that matters, not that looks interesting today, right? And overall, it ensures team stability also, at least is what I've seen, that because employees don't get confused, right? When you are wavering without knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing, most of the time, if you talk to the employees of a startup, they will not be able to say, we are doing this because of that. So these are at least reasons why it matters, and at least the way we gauge is, first of all, if you talk to the CEO, can they paint a vision? And then you talk to employees, do they share the same vision or not, separately, right? And when we invested in Big Basket, not only founders were able to say what they were doing, a lot of next level employees were able to say that we are trying to, be the convenient option for groceries in India. So that was very clear as to what they were planning to do. So they actually never entered into some of the other verticals because of that. When you ask them, and this is one common thing I've seen in a lot of startup presentations, is when you ask them who your competition, they will build those standard 2x2s or those checkmark kind of slide. They will essentially trash everything else or everybody around and say I'm the best, right? And that is typically not a realistic picture. So people who think long term also know what my competition is good in and what will kill me. So they try to build moats around things that will cannibalize their own business. Also, these kind of founders typically are able to justify why they're doing what they're doing with at least some logic, right? And it is not that every time those reasons or justifications are correct, but at least they have a logical reason for what they're doing. And goes without saying that, going back to the focus point, they know where to spend energies and what not to worry about. Again, a very good case in point is, when people started doing hyperlocal deliveries, a lot of these full stack guys, and again, I'm taking example of Big Basket, they had this question of, somebody can pick up from a retailer and deliver to a customer. So will it kill their business or not? So they did something, but they didn't go full hog on, retailer, picking up from retailer and delivering to a customer. So those are some examples, at least, of people who think long term and how they behave. The second one is around ambition. And this was also something that in last 3-4 years we started at least started feeling that this matters. And the reason it matters is that people who think big also are looking for building large companies. People who are okay doing, again, 100 crore, 200 crore kind of exit, most likely don't have the vision or the ambition. And it's kind of correlated that people who don't have vision and ambition are looking for smaller exits or are going to be happy with smaller exits. And at least VC business doesn't allow, and I'm sure all of you are aware of that, the economics doesn't allow us for small exits. We need to basically back companies who are looking for large exits. People who have ambition also are very good CEOs to inspire their team into thinking big. Because when they come, they are never happy with small successes. They are looking for large successes, right? And that kind of is a virtuous cycle within the whole team. And as I said, their ability to dream is what dictates the outcome or the likely outcome. And the indicators, the first thing that at least we try to find out is what kind of problem are they trying to solve, as in how large is their pain point, and if they're looking to solve a very small niche problem, and even if that is the case, over time, do they have a vision or desire to solve a bigger problem? Their ability to drive their teams. As I said, what outcomes are founders satisfied with? At times, people are very happy, and this appears when you ask them what progress have you made, what do you think has been a success or a failure. When you listen to what they think is success, you kind of appreciate the kind of outcomes they're happy with. The third point is just around insight, and this I think is a slightly harder one to conclude on, because it's not a value judgment on I am more intelligent versus you. Typically, I would say the best way to figure out if somebody else's insight is when they are able to talk about things in their business that I can't fathom or figure out, right? Then at least I have some confidence that yeah, their insight, or they have some insight which I didn't have on that particular industry or that particular business model. It helps in decision making, because if you have insight, you know what way of or what solution will work, and what solution will work in long term. A lot of times the solutions are okay, or they can work in short term, but they hardly ever work in long term. One classic example is again one of my prior portfolio company called LiveSpace, and this is a company with just online home design. For the longest part, a lot of investors didn't invest thinking that it is a very execution heavy business, right? Because every time you take a customer project, you have to go and do their new home. But at least the founder from day one had this vision that he will build a house of India. And I don't know if you have seen this company called House, HOUZZ in US. But he was trying to build it for India. So he had a vision and thinking, and he had this insight that in India, just trying to have a listing model, which is houses in US, will not make sense. So in last 2 years, 2.5 years, what they build is this tech product which any designer in India can use to design a home, and basically the way the product is designed, you have to buy those products from LiveSpace only. So suddenly, if you see, there are like several thousand designers in India. If all of them are come on this platform, there are few that have started coming. Suddenly, this business from execution heavy business in terms of selling to every customer by an employee of LiveSpace has suddenly become a much more democratic sales process, whereas the back end is controlled by LiveSpace, but the front end or the sales process is controlled by a designer. To me, this is again a question of both how long-term thinking the founder had and how what insight they had on the market. Most of these founders who have insight are also good in acknowledging gaps in their understanding. They are willing to say, I don't know this, but I'll figure it out in following steps. Again, it's a very common thing that it's very normal when we are looking for fundraise that we try to answer every question, even if we don't know the answer to that. In fact, an interesting anecdote, we were interviewing somebody for Stellaris associate position, and that person presented a case on logistics, and that person talked about growth in logistics being double GDP in next few years. That's a prediction, right? So our obvious question is why? As in logistics, typically, if you see, is a leading indicator of where GDP is going. So if GDP is going at 7%, why would logistics grow at 15%? And he didn't know the answer, but he went into a area which if you ask 2 more questions, you know that he's just faking, right? So I would say it is again in some sense an indication of what kind of insight these people have is when they start saying, this area I don't know, but this area I really understand, and I'm willing to talk about it. So acknowledging that becomes important, because then you are intellectually honest with yourself, and then you will go back and figure out, how do I solve this problem that I didn't have an answer to. So that was more about strategic thinking. The next 2 slides are more about how do we, or why people skills matter. People skills matter because, and again, I was listening to one of the podcast of one of the more successful investors in Silicon Valley, and he had a very nice way of putting aside or putting together the job of a CEO. And he said there are only 2 things a CEO is supposed to do. One is obviously figuring out business model / forward direction of the company. And as soon as you start seeing that happen, you will typically see that this company may be okay if they are the only player in the market, but as soon as you have 3-4 competitors, the quality of execution will be much poorer than compared to other better staffed people. And end of the day, CEO can only do so much. You need functional experts across companies. One of the best ways to at least to judge for whether the CEO has the right people skill is just to ask who else has joined the company. Now this could be set of co-founders or first few employees that they've hired. And looking at that quality, you can very easily gauge whether this person has people skills or not. A classic case is a company that again we invested in, a company called Zepho. And on day one, so the founder was part of Helion. And on day one, this person had 3 other co-founders. One of the co-founders was actually enrolled to do a MBA in Kellogg's. And that guy, the CEO, convinced this person to forego for 1 year, take a sabbatical, or not sabbatical, I don't know, deferment from the MBA. And just be around for 1 year. And after 6 months, that guy actually rejected the MBA admission because he just felt this was a very good company to work with. And again, the set of people they hired after that. So next level team is a very good indicator, at least to us, of is this a good people person? The other one is just, when you go and meet these teams, you can very clearly see if is the CEO the only one speaking, or are others giving their independent views on any problem that you're asking. So how inclusive is the person also tells you how much power each one of the next level person has in any kind of decision making. Also, again, if you talk, and again, I will not name companies, but there are several of them that we go and talk to where CEO is the only person who decides. Everybody is a doer. That works when it's a small startup, but it's very, very hard when you become a large company to make that work. So these are things. And again, a classic, and this happened with me like 7 years back. I went to a company, very famous entrepreneur. It didn't become a large company ever, but the entrepreneur is very well known. And we were having coffee in that meeting. And the way this person would talk to the guy who's serving tea versus us, there is such a stark difference that this person has hierarchy in mind. And again, it may look very small, but it is also a good reflection of how they will treat different people in their organization. The other piece which kind of goes hand in hand is the quality of communication and sales skills that a CEO brings to the table. Again, this matters because it helps percolate the vision, it helps teams stick around. It also allows employee problems to be solved in a more constructive manner. CEOs who are very siloed will not be even aware of what is happening or what their senior management team is thinking. The best way to gauge this is how well can he sell or she sell when they're sitting in a customer setting, when they're sitting with their employees, or when they're sitting and talking to us, can they sell their idea to us? So that's a very good way of judging whether this person can go and sell to others also or not. A lot of companies, and this may or may not be formal, but a lot of companies at least have very open policies around taking feedback. So one of the things that at least I ask is how many times does the CEO sit with one-on-one with his or her direct reportees? How many times do they have review meetings with the whole senior management team? That's a very clear indication of how good or open the communication channels are within the company. The third aspect, which is tech orientation, this goes without saying because all companies are tech companies, right? At least in this space that we invest in. But tech, people who realize the importance of tech is a very big differentiator. For a lot of people, and for a lot of people, it is an outsourced function. And again, that is very clear. Sometimes startups are resource strapped, so they will have technology outsourced. Hiring a technology head, I think, is one of the most difficult hires for any CEO. You can very easily hire an operating head, you can very easily hire a marketing head, sales head. But hiring a technology head is almost next to impossible. And people who are able to do that does have an edge over their competitors. This is a very classic situation, and this doesn't mean that the founder needs to be a tech or techie. This essentially means their orientation on how they think of problem solving. Do they think of using product and technology first, or are they thinking of putting people to solve problems? And there are enough companies in our portfolio from past. Again, because it didn't work out, I won't name them, but their model was, if I'm selling insurance, if I have to grow, I will put more people in insurance sales. It was not about using technology to improve conversion. Or if I'm selling homes, I will put more people on the street to sell homes. And you know, even if it is outsourced, if you ask the CEO what they would think about the tech team, there are some very clear answers you can see where their orientation is not there. So typically when you have, even if you have outsourced, ideally my view is that you should still be talking to 2-3 potential hires if you had money whom you will bring in inside on technology. And then what kind of stake you give to them, what kind of responsibilities also shows tech orientation of the founders. And last, as I said, this I've seen in several companies, people who are hell-bent on solving customer problems via building product. Invariably, I think there is a very high correlation, end up winning in the end. People are solving something else, will, may or may not win, but they will get wavered or they will waver around in their journey. Because as we all, it looks very obvious that customers will stay with the products that they love. And most of the time, I think you can raise money, you can grow. Challenge is how do you retain that? You can't spend money behind. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make financial sense to make money behind retention. And that has to be driven by product. So most of the companies that we look at, which is typically either Series A, Pre-Series A, this is one of the more important pieces that we have started to focus on. And it is, in a lot of companies that I've been part of, and even otherwise, it is essentially very easily visible when you ask, options that CEOs take. A lot of time, and I've seen again in several companies like Zepho, LiveSpace, BigBasket, where they would stop growing because the growth methodology will lead to customer dissatisfaction, not satisfaction. So they will stop, make sure customer is satisfied, and then grow. And that, at that time as an investor, you may feel jittery that, for next 3 months we'll not grow. But in long term, at least I've seen it play out. One of the things that we do very extensively, if companies have been around long enough, is to talk to their consumers or customers in a very, I would say, one-to-one manner to find out really why do they use this product and what alternatives have they thought of. Also, several of these companies you will see, even if CEO gets to know of the problem, even if they are large companies, that person, if they are obsessed about customer satisfaction, they will pick up the call, write an email back, and respond to that customer query. And I think, I'm sure everybody's aware, this whole notion within Amazon in US where once a week, every senior manager sits in a call center to handle calls from consumers. And it may be an old saying, I don't know if it is still followed or not, but at least I like that philosophy of spending time where there is a direct line of channel with the customer. And lastly, these are some of the other important pieces. I'll not go deeper into them, but I just bucketed them, but couldn't figure out a very good way to structure. Perseverance, I think there's hardly a company that I have seen which has only gone through, good times. Every company goes through question marks, existential questions, economy being bad, people leaving. But our entrepreneurs perseverant to go through those bad times, I think is very important. How fast are they able to learn from mistakes? So people who have been around don't make same mistakes twice. Again, we all are aware of how iterative you are. Intellectual honesty, which is essentially what it means is, are you taking decisions based on data, or are you taking decisions just on gut? And people will take, or founders do take decision based on gut, but then they look for data to very short period of time to figure out whether or not they should go ahead with that gut or not. Obviously, there are people like Steve Jobs who did purely everything based on gut, but those are almost an outlier situation, even within entrepreneurs who themselves are outliers. And execution skills, again, goes without saying that execution skills, end of the day, you can have all the vision, strategy, but if you can't execute on the ground, it is of no use. Somebody a few years back was asking me, which is the most satisfying profession in the world. I think entrepreneurship is the most satisfying profession, and I'm calling it profession, but I think, well, I have not seen unhappy entrepreneurs. Literally, as in, and maybe they are trying to rationalize at times, but I have never seen anybody say, I was an entrepreneur for 2 years and I hated it. everybody in every other profession will at some point of time will say, I was a lawyer and this was very boring. I never liked doing this. So I think it is good that you guys, and I don't know how many of you are entrepreneurs, but if you are, it is good that you guys have chosen. I think it is important that you enjoy that journey. Obviously, outcomes matter. But if you enjoy this journey, hopefully outcomes will also happen.